Did you know that according to recent studies, over 158 million people worldwide are trapped in some form of toxic relationship, many without even realizing it? Whether it's a narcissistic abuser, a manipulator, or the silent suffocation of a toxic couple, the psychological damage can be as real as physical harm. And here's the part that hits even harder. Researchers have found that escaping the grip of a perverse narcissist can take up to 7 attempts on average, because their control isn't just in your environment, it's in your mind. They break your confidence, rewrite your reality, and make you doubt the very ground you stand on. But there's a hidden truth they never want you to know. Once you understand their psychology, you can become untouchable, immune to their manipulation, and free from the invisible chains holding you back. If what I'm about to share speaks to you, even just a little, give me a sign, like this video, share it, drop a thank you in the comments, or subscribe. It changes everything for what comes next. Carl Jung once said, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." But when one of those personalities is a narcissist and the other is someone with undeniable inner strength, the reaction isn't transformation. It's shock, resistance, and sometimes quiet hostility. Studies from the American Psychological Association reveal that narcissistic individuals often experience what's called narcissistic injury when they encounter people they cannot control. In simple terms, your strength creates a psychological wound for them because it exposes their deepest fear, powerlessness. If you've ever walked into a room and noticed a narcissist suddenly change their tone, become colder, or subtly start undermining you, you've witnessed this silent shock in action. It's not always loud. In fact, it often hides behind smiles, sarcastic remarks, or sudden disinterest. But beneath that facade, neuroscience shows something fascinating. Research on dominance hierarchies in social species, including humans, demonstrates that when an individual perceives another as non-controllable, their brain's amygdala, responsible for threat detection, fires at higher intensity. They feel the same kind of alertness as if they were facing a rival predator. Seneca warned, "It is not the man who is too little, but the man who craves more that is poor." A narcissist craves control over perception, over narrative, over people. When you walk in with self-assurance, clear boundaries, and a calm that cannot be shaken, you remove the very thing they feed on, the illusion that they can define who you are. And here is where it gets even more intriguing. Harvard Business Review research shows that people with high self-efficacy, the belief in one's ability to handle challenges, are perceived as less pliable in workplace politics. In narcissist's eyes, that makes you a threat, not a partner. Imagine for a moment that your life is a fortress. You've built it with self-respect, discipline, and a refusal to let others dictate your worth. A narcissist approaches expecting open gates, because with many people, they can just push the right emotional buttons and walk in. But when they see the gates are closed, and worse, that you don't even look bothered, they experience something like a short circuit. This is why some narcissists will avoid direct confrontation at first, opting instead for more covert ways to test your defenses. And here's the part most people don't realize. This shock they feel is not admiration, even if they smile and say they respect your strength. Psychologically, it's discomfort. Sigmund Freud described narcissism as a defense against feelings of inadequacy, often formed in early childhood. When your presence makes them feel those buried insecurities resurface, they will react, not because they want to, but because their ego feels under siege. You might think strength alone protects you, but here's the twist. To a narcissist, your strength is like a mirror they can't look away from. It reflects back all the areas they've been avoiding in themselves. This is why so many survivors of narcissistic abuse report that the moment they began to set boundaries or show independence, the narcissist's behavior escalated. Studies on emotional abuse dynamics suggest that this escalation is not random. It's a calculated, even if unconscious, attempt to reassert dominance. Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor, wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." This is your shield. They might try to provoke, to confuse, to diminish. But the science, the philosophy, and the lived experiences of countless strong individuals point to the same truth. Their shock at your strength is proof you've already broken the invisible chains they throw on others. The more you understand this, the more you realize what feels like tension is actually your freedom becoming visible. Carl Jung once observed, "Where love rules, there is no will to power, and where power predominates, there love is lacking." For a narcissist, love and genuine connection are secondary to control. Control is their oxygen. Without it, they feel as if they're drowning in uncertainty. Neuroscience confirms this. Studies on perceived control, like those published in Nature Neuroscience, reveal that when people lose the sense they can influence their environment, the brain activates the same stress circuits as it does during physical pain. To a narcissist, losing control over you isn't just uncomfortable, it's existentially threatening. Sigmund Freud theorized that narcissistic behavior originates from early developmental wounds. As children, many narcissists experienced environments where they felt powerless, perhaps through neglect, conditional love, or excessive criticism. To survive, they built a false self, a carefully curated persona designed to command attention and avoid rejection. This false self becomes their armor, but it is also fragile. When they meet someone strong, with a clear sense of identity that cannot be manipulated, it's as if you've walked straight through their defenses without even trying. The fear of losing control manifests in different ways. Some narcissists become aggressive, attempting to intimidate you into submission. Others shift to covert manipulation, guilt-tripping, silent treatments, or calculated compliments that subtly shift the power dynamic. Research from the University of Georgia on narcissism and interpersonal strategies shows that high-level narcissists alternate between charm and cruelty with surgical precision. This isn't random, it's a learned behavioral loop to keep you off balance. One of the most misunderstood aspects of this fear is that it isn't rooted in logic. You might be thinking, I'm not trying to control them, so why would they feel threatened? But the narcissist's mind is wired differently. In their worldview, relationships are rarely a space for mutual respect. They are arenas where one must dominate or be dominated. This black and white thinking is what fuels their suspicion when they meet someone they can't easily sway. Epictetus once said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." That's exactly what terrifies them. Your self-mastery is a reminder of what they lack. In fact, a 2018 study in personality and individual differences found that people with high narcissistic traits scored significantly lower on measures of emotional regulation and impulse control. Your ability to remain calm under pressure, to think before reacting, is alien to them, and dangerous because it prevents their usual hooks from catching you. Consider the workplace example. A narcissistic manager thrives on micromanaging and creating dependency. When they meet an employee who performs exceptionally well, communicates clearly, and doesn't require constant approval, their insecurity spikes. Instead of celebrating the competence, they might withhold praise, assign unreasonable tasks, or spread subtle rumors. Why? Because in their mind, if they can't control your perception of yourself, they risk losing their dominance in the group hierarchy. Freud called this projective identification. They push their own insecurity onto you, hoping you'll internalize it and shrink yourself. But when you don't, when you hold your ground, their fear of losing control intensifies. They may double down, escalate their tactics, or, if all else fails, try to discredit you entirely. This is not because you are doing something wrong. It's because your very existence, as someone immune to manipulation, dismantles the psychological scaffolding they've spent years building. Marcus Aurelius offered a solution centuries ago. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. That strength is exactly what they can't match. And here's the paradox. The more they fear losing control over you, the more chaotic and revealing their behavior becomes. In trying to keep you in their grip, they expose their own weakness for all to see. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The opinion of 10,000 men is of no value if none of them knows anything about the subject." Narcissists understand this principle instinctively, not to seek truth, but to twist perception. They know that confidence is rarely destroyed in one blow. It is eroded slowly, almost invisibly, through small, calculated acts. And the most dangerous attacks are the ones you don't see coming. Psychologists call this erosion tactics. Instead of confronting you directly, they chip away at the pillars that hold your self-esteem upright. It begins subtly. Maybe they interrupt you in meetings, laugh at your ideas, or make small jokes about your abilities. Research from the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology confirms that repeated microaggressions, even when disguised as humor, can reduce self-confidence over time, especially when coming from someone in a position of perceived authority. Carl Jung warned that the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. For a narcissist, your self-acceptance is an obstacle they must dismantle. They might start by planting seeds of doubt. a backhanded compliment. You're good at this for someone your age. Forces your brain to process both praise and insult at once. Neuroscience shows that when the brain receives conflicting emotional signals, it increases cognitive dissonance, making you more susceptible to outside influence. They exploit this mental confusion deliberately. Then comes the rewriting of your narrative. They will recall past events in ways that make you question your memory, a tactic known as gaslighting. Sigmund Freud described how altering a person's perception of reality could destabilize their entire identity. Modern studies confirm it. Consistent gaslighting can trigger symptoms similar to trauma, including hypervigilance and self-doubt. This is why, when you start doubting whether you're overreacting, you're already in the gravitational pull of their manipulation. One of their most effective tools is isolation. They don't always do it physically. Sometimes it's social and emotional. They might undermine your relationships by suggesting certain friends are jealous of you or that family members don't really understand you. The goal isn't to remove everyone at once. It's to make you gradually more dependent on their approval. And here's the psychological trick. They make themselves the center of your validation, so when they withdraw it, you feel an ache that drives you to earn it back. Epictetus taught, if someone tells you you're wrong, don't be offended. Instead, think, if they are right, I'll learn something. If they are wrong, I'll teach them something. This perspective is kryptonite to their tactics, because it keeps your sense of worth internally anchored. But most people, unaware of the game being played, react emotionally to these small cuts, which only gives the narcissist more information about where to strike next. They also use comparison as a weapon, publicly praising others in your presence for traits you already have, but failing to acknowledge them in you, triggers a subtle sense of inadequacy. Behavioral economics calls this relative deprivation, and it's proven to increase feelings of insecurity, even when your actual competence hasn't changed. And when all else fails, they employ the confusion compliment. This is where they praise you but attach a condition that keeps you striving for more of their approval. You're doing great lately, but I wonder how long you can keep it up. On the surface, it sounds like encouragement. Underneath, it's a seed of doubt designed to sprout the next time you hesitate. The most insidious part is that these tactics work gradually, like water wearing down stone. Survivors often say they didn't realize what was happening until they felt like a shadow of themselves. That's the point. By the time you notice, your confidence has been quietly dismantled. But understanding these tactics changes everything. Once you see the pattern, you can step outside it, observe it, and refuse to play the role they've written for you. And in that moment, the power begins to shift back where it belongs, into your hands. Carl Jung once said, "I am not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become." That choice, to stand unshaken in the face of manipulation, is not a gift, it's a skill. And science shows us exactly how that skill can be built. Emotional resilience isn't just being strong. It's the ability to adapt, recover, and even grow stronger when faced with psychological attacks. Neuroscience tells us that resilience is linked to the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for decision-making and emotional regulation. When you experience stress, your amygdala fires up, triggering fight-or-flight responses. But resilient individuals show a stronger connection between the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala, which allows them to pause, assess, and respond strategically instead of reacting impulsively. Functional MRI studies at the University of Wisconsin found that people with higher emotional resilience not only recover faster from emotional stress, but also show lower baseline cortisol levels, the stress hormone, meaning they live in a calmer internal state even when facing adversity. Epictetus believed that it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. This isn't just philosophy, it's measurable. In a landmark study on stress inoculation, psychologists found that individuals exposed to manageable, controlled stressors, paired with recovery time, developed a more robust emotional response system. In other words, practicing resilience under smaller challenges can prepare you to withstand larger ones without crumbling. But here's the fascinating twist. Resilience also has a social and cognitive dimension. Dr. Martin Seligman, founder of positive psychology, demonstrated that optimistic thinking styles protect against the spiral of learned helplessness. Narcissists thrive on making you feel trapped and powerless. Optimism breaks that cycle by reframing setbacks as temporary, specific, and solvable. In Seligman's studies, people trained to identify and challenge their negative thoughts showed a 50% lower relapse into depression after adversity. Mental fortitude, the ability to keep going even under sustained attack, comes from the same root. Stoic philosophers trained themselves to anticipate potential hardships, a practice known as premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. Seneca would reflect daily on the worst-case scenario, not to dwell in fear, but to rob it of its power. Modern cognitive behavioral therapy echoes this, teaching clients to face uncomfortable possibilities mentally, so they are less destabilizing when they occur in reality. Another scientific key is emotional granularity, the ability to name your emotions precisely. Dr. Lisa Feldman Barrett's research shows that people who can label their emotional state with accuracy, "I feel irritated" instead of just "I'm upset," have better emotional control and recover faster from conflict. This matters because narcissists often aim to push you into a generalized emotional haze, where your reactions are easier to manipulate. Specificity is your weapon. It keeps you clear-headed. Physical habits also play a hidden role. Studies in Frontiers in Psychology reveal that regular exercise, meditation, and proper sleep enhance neural plasticity, making your brain more adaptable under stress. The U.S. Navy SEALs train mental toughness not only through physical endurance, but through controlled breathing exercises, which lower heart rate and keep the mind steady in chaos. Imagine applying that in a conversation with a narcissist. While they escalate emotionally, you remain physiologically calm. That alone shifts the balance of power. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." The narcissist's world is one of constant reaction, of living in the storm. Resilience allows you to step outside that storm and watch it from the shore. And the stronger your emotional and mental defenses become, the less their words and actions penetrate. You stop being reactive and start being intentional. And once you operate from that place, you're not just surviving their tactics, you're dismantling their influence without ever raising your voice. Carl Jung once noted, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." When dealing with a narcissist, this truth becomes a powerful weapon. Their attacks, meant to weaken you, can instead reveal the exact areas where your personal growth can accelerate. The key is in how you interpret and use those moments. Neuroscience supports this reframing. Studies in neuroplasticity show that the brain rewires itself based on repeated thought patterns. When you take an attack, be it an insult, a subtle undermining comment, or calculated exclusion, and consciously choose to interpret it as a mirror for self-reflection instead of a wound, you change the neural pathway it activates. Instead of triggering a loop of self-doubt, it reinforces a circuit of analysis, learning, and adaptability. Over time, these circuits become stronger, meaning you're literally training your brain to become immune to emotional sabotage. Marcus Aurelius lived this principle daily. As emperor, he faced endless political manipulation and personal betrayals. Yet in meditations, he repeatedly thanked adversity for sharpening his discipline, reminding himself that opponents are training partners for the soul. This is not romanticizing abuse, it's reclaiming authority over how the event shapes you. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" the growth-oriented mind asks, "What is this teaching me about my own strength?" Sigmund Freud's psychoanalytic lens would view a narcissist's attack as a projection of their own unresolved conflicts. If you accept that their behavior reflects their internal chaos rather than your value, you strip their words of power. This psychological distancing, sometimes called cognitive diffusion, has been shown in acceptance and commitment therapy, ACT, to reduce emotional distress by over 40% in high-conflict situations. Let's take an example. A narcissistic colleague questions your competence in front of others. The immediate emotional reaction might be anger or embarrassment. But instead, you could use it as a live test of your composure. You slow your breathing, respond with concise facts, and maintain steady eye contact. That single moment is not just surviving, it's practicing emotional dominance under pressure. The more you do this, the more confidence you build, and confidence itself becomes a deterrent against future attacks. There's also a hidden advantage in their predictability. Research in behavioral psychology shows that narcissists operate in patterns. They recycle tactics like gaslighting, triangulation, and silent treatments. Once you recognize the pattern, you can anticipate it. And when you anticipate it, you remove its element of surprise, which robs it of much of its power. Anticipation turns the game into training. Each attack becomes a scenario in which you refine your boundaries, test your patience, or sharpen your verbal assertiveness. Seneca taught, difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body. The Stoics didn't seek harm, but they understood that resistance builds capacity. The resistance provided by a narcissist's manipulation, if met with awareness, becomes a resistance workout for your psyche. And here's the critical insight. Growth doesn't just mean becoming stronger so they can't hurt you. It means expanding into a version of yourself so anchored in self-worth that their behavior becomes irrelevant noise. Carl Jung would say that in facing the shadow, your own emotional triggers, you integrate parts of yourself that once felt vulnerable. The narcissist unintentionally plays the role of a catalyst, forcing you to confront, strengthen, and integrate those parts. What they intend as a trap becomes a forge. In the end, their attacks can serve as reminders, not of what you lack, but of how far you've come. Every time you respond with calm clarity, every time you hold your boundaries without guilt, you're proving to yourself that you no longer live in their psychological arena. And that realization, that you can turn manipulation into mastery, marks the moment when their power over you finally dissolves. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This is the essence of being untouchable. Not that the world suddenly becomes safe or fair, but that no one can reach inside you without your permission. When a narcissist realizes this about you, the game is over. They may still try, but every attempt falls flat, because your sense of worth no longer depends on their approval, their narrative, or their perception. The Stoics understood something modern psychology has only recently confirmed. The greatest power is the ability to remain calm and clear while others lose control. Studies in emotional regulation, such as those conducted at Stanford University, show that individuals who can delay emotional reactions during conflict maintain higher levels of cognitive performance. In simple terms, you think sharper, make better decisions, and protect your energy when you refuse to be pulled into their storm. Carl Jung described individuation as the process of becoming your most authentic self, unshaped by the expectations or manipulations of others. Living untouchable is living individuated. It's no longer dancing to the rhythm of someone else's mood swings. You become the stable center, the one who cannot be baited into chaos. In the narcissist's eyes, this is the ultimate rebellion, because it's a power they cannot counterfeit. And here's what the data says. Resilience, boundary setting, and self-mastery don't just protect you from narcissistic abuse. They make you more magnetic to healthy people. Research published in the Journal of Positive Psychology found that individuals with high self-determination attracted more authentic, mutually respectful relationships, while simultaneously discouraging manipulative personalities from engaging long-term. This means that by becoming untouchable, you're not just removing toxicity, you're reshaping your entire social environment. Seneca urged, associate with people who are likely to improve you. In practice, living untouchable means curating your circle with intention. You no longer feel the need to prove yourself to those committed to misunderstanding you. You invest your time in people who value honesty over flattery, growth over ego, and authenticity over performance. And as your environment shifts, so does your inner peace. The paradox is that when you stop reacting, you gain more influence. Not over others, over yourself. The narcissist thrives on your reactions because they're a form of emotional currency. Withdraw that currency, and their investment in controlling you becomes worthless. Over time, they either fade away or are forced to engage on terms that respect your autonomy. Freud believed that unexpressed emotions will never die. They are buried alive and will come forth later in uglier ways. The Stoic path ensures you're not burying your emotions, but processing them. You acknowledge anger, betrayal, and hurt, but you don't let them dictate your actions. Instead, you convert them into clarity, patience, and an unshakable sense of self. Living untouchable is not about being cold or unreachable. It's about being so grounded that no storm, no insult, no manipulation, no calculated attack can uproot you. It's about standing in a crowded room where others seek control and knowing that you've already won, simply by refusing to play. And in this space, you discover something profound. The narcissist no longer matters. Not because you've ignored them into irrelevance, but because your focus has shifted entirely toward building, learning, and living in alignment with your values. That's the life they can't enter, the fortress without walls, because it exists entirely within you. Marcus Aurelius ended many of his reflections with a reminder. It is not death that a man should fear, but never beginning to live. Living untouchable is not just defense, it's the beginning of truly living. It's the liberation of your mind from the grip of manipulation, the rediscovery of your own strength, and the quiet, unwavering joy of knowing that no matter who tries to shake you, your foundation will hold.